remember early on in my career when I was trying to crack the semi-professional side of things before it went. They were all super special to me, and on this Christmas Eve after that year of under-20s where I started to believe and was doing the academy stuff and whatnot. Worked with a lot of other sports people. Sean Johnson's one of our best league players, and what he said really resonated with me about a year ago. And it's funny how many times I've gone around in circles to come back to where I am now, and I could have had it done so long ago, but she's like, just you finishing your
And thanks for tuning in today. This week's episode is brought to you in conjunction with Upskilled and their mini MBA. If you want to get the skills and knowledge to help move you forward without all of the big expense, then this mini MBA with Upskilled is the right way to go. Follow the link in the show notes and you can get $500 off. Baden, thanks for joining me on the show today. Looking forward to our conversation, learning a bit more about you, where you're at today, and understanding that journey.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here and looking forward to the yarn.
Brilliant. And well, look, I know when we caught up last time, we were really having a sort of a chat about you and the journey, and really got into I suppose, an appreciation or understanding of you in teaching. Now, for those who are listening who I guess don't know who you are, don't know that bit about you, please just give us that little lowdown on you.
Yeah, I guess former professional rugby player. Like many have had a few different stoppages in terms of retirement and injuries and the rest. But now at the end of my career, where I'm now involved in teaching, working as a teaching assistant, work in the gym, do a bit of coaching in rugby, coaching at a school there, and also working on a little bit of a kicking business on the side to see where that goes, to pass on some knowledge from my career. So that's where I'm at right now, and just battling like many to find their feet after rugby, but finally in a place now where I'm in the right direction.
That's so good. Great that you're finding yourself in that right direction, and like you say, we'll chat a little bit about what that battle is that we all kind of go through. I really love the point you mentioned there, just kicking off with that bit of kicking coaching, trying to find a way of giving back. You seem to be doing that in sport, but then also with children in education. What is it about the kicking in particular that that sort of inspires you to give back through that coaching?
So something that was probably one of the strengths I had whilst I was playing was the kicking side of things. And I remember early on in my career when I was trying to crack the semi-professional side of things before it went into the fully professional, I saw a sports psychologist, and he said, go to the head coach of this team and ask them what they need for you to make the team. And again, I was like 18 or something and pretty terrified. I was like, I can't go up to the head coach of the top side. And he pretty much came back and said, like, we need at least like a 75% kicker. And if you can get to that range, then you'll be in a conversation. And I just remember getting obsessed with that, trying to get to that percentage. I'd write down my kicks each week, set myself a plan in terms of how many times I'd need to kick a week. And by the end of the season, I was sort of kicking 85% and made the team. So I guess it was an early indication of what could get me in a position of professionalism that could separate myself maybe from others and the work that went in. So I guess that was the start, and I got more and more obsessed with the kicking, and just something that I feel is a little bit more natural to me to give back with. I guess that obsession led to a bit of knowledge acquisition. So just seems like a natural progression, really.
That's really interesting. What's interesting for me is that started at 18. It starts with that question to a coach, what do you need? And then you flick the switch. You find that, I don't know, were you passionate about kicking? Was that something you were interested in prior to that particular season?
Yes, I grew up playing soccer or football. So I guess it was a natural. When I came to rugby, I didn't really know what to do necessarily. So I'd kick the ball probably more than I should, because it was in soccer, that's all you do, right? So it was something I was naturally good at, I suppose. Wasn't necessarily great at it because I didn't have all the technique or anything like that. I just probably so used to kicking a ball for so long it was natural,
Hmm.
and was all right. Was pretty good, but I wasn't necessarily consistent, and I didn't necessarily have a real plan.
Right.
So that was great for me. Having that psychologist who finishing off a book of his just now at the moment, which is awesome to look back on and learn things that he taught me back when I was sort of 18, 19. But just having that plan that he pushed me in the right direction and also having a bit of a passion for it combined made that, I guess, more of an obsession.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really good. That being intentional about something, getting a plan in place, but also building on a strength, finding out that strength, that's something that was perhaps more natural to you because of your experience in soccer, in football. Yeah. So, I mean, on that point, then, for you growing up, what was sport? How did sport really come into your life and start to influence the way that you grew up?
It was probably as as I'm finding out as I get a bit older, I'm probably more likely than not got inattentive ADHD, and sport for me was just a vice. Like I was obsessed with anything and everything to do with sport, and I think that's where I was super fortunate was, went to little primary schools and schools that were had many sports to choose from and would play pretty much anything under the sun. And every now and then was just to get out of class in school and go to competitions. But I was, yeah, one of those, looking back, I was just obsessed, was outside all the time, whether it be, soccer ball, rugby ball, skateboarding, basketball, anything I could get my hands on, I'd do. And I remember getting to the point where must have been about 13, 14, and I was playing basketball, soccer, and rugby in the same season. And I remember asking Mum, can I play ice hockey? And she's like, no chance, you're playing bloody everything under the sun, and that's expensive. And there's four kids and only two of us. So yeah, sport was always at the head of everything I did, and I guess I kind of laid a lot of my identity on
Mhm.
sport before I even knew what that really meant. So when it wasn't there, or when I had injuries and things, it made it doubly as hard.
And so, you're talking there about that multidisciplinary sports, or lots of sports that you were playing and enjoying. When did you have to choose or start to specialize in a particular sport?
Yeah, I was super fortunate at the school I was at where most kids around sort of that 14, 15 were having to make a decision. That's sort of in terms of time commitments, and I guess most teachers and parents want you to, hone in on one sport and go in that direction. And I had some PE teachers that at the time were like, you're going to get some crossover skills. I was playing sort of first 11 when I was would have been near 14, and the coach and the under 15 rugby coach were like, well, he's pretty good at both. Why not he have one night off training for rugby so I can do the soccer whilst being part of the under 15s, which is the first year I played rugby. And then I'd play basketball on a Tuesday, and they didn't, that one didn't overlap. And they were really encouraging by allowing me to play. So it wasn't really until the following year, which was, I guess I was 15 going on 16, where I sort of honed in on the rugby with the time commitment. Still played the soccer because we played on a Wednesday night, and ended up playing soccer all the way through till 18, or the last year of school. So I was really fortunate there, and I think that helped me massively too, because I was coming into a sport I didn't know a huge amount about technically and tactically, and all my eggs weren't necessarily in that basket, or my focus wasn't all there. So I had that other outlet or canvas to play soccer and have a secondary way to express myself.
Hi, I want to take this moment to thank Upskilled and their mini MBA for sponsoring this week's session. One of the great things about their mini MBA is it allows you to gain the skills and knowledge to help propel you that little bit further forward. It gets you understanding the vocabulary in the room, and also gives you some of those skills to navigate the corporate career, the government career, or indeed stepping into not for profit. So, big thanks for Upskilled and the mini MBA for sponsoring this week. And hey, check it out. Link in the show notes. You can get $500 off. And what was it then? I always ask all of those sports, where did academic performance fit into that?
It's a great question, Ryan. No, I was probably, yeah. It's now that I know what I know about myself as I get a bit older, I was extremely fortunate with the people around me at the time. So there were some things I was a little bit better at, say like, creative writing or English and things like that,
Hmm.
that were a bit more subjective. The sort of black and white topics and subjects I really struggled with because I was kind of like always wanted to know the why, and
Mm.
you don't need to know the why of a maths equation and science and stuff. And I really struggled with those ones. Then, yeah, the subjects I wouldn't necessarily say I enjoyed or did all right at, like I passed. But again, it was a pretty early learning how important having the right people around you are in a situation like that, because I wanted to do well. I just didn't want to be sitting down
Mm.
for long periods of time when I could be outside or playing sports. And I had a long-term partner at the time who I met in high school, her mum was a deputy principal, and she went on to study and do a PhD in education.
Mm.
And she was huge for me. She helped push me and keep me on task and get me through high school. And then the same thing with my university degree. She was huge for that. So I even finding out now with my studies that I can't, and I don't think anyone can truly do things alone, but
Mm.
knowing that it's not a strength of mine, weighing on other people the best I can, and people that are willing to help, not necessarily pushing myself onto others, was massive for me I guess in a platform that wasn't a strength necessarily of mine.
Yeah. So thinking back to that time, how did she help? What was it that she did?
Well, it's interesting looking back. The classes I did well in weren't necessarily to do with the enjoyment of the topic. I had teachers that would just constantly said I'd be off task and get me on task, and it was often as simple as, Baden, I'll go back on task, or like I'll get distracted, Baden, stop talking. Like it was just this ability that teachers probably were similar to that as students themselves, and they could see that I wasn't like a big egg, or I wasn't rude, or I wasn't disrespectful. I just was easily distracted. And I think the mum at the time as well, she was very aware of that, and she was on my case when she could see me drifting. If she see I was really struggling, she'd tell me to stand up, move around, and it was a deeper understanding they had for me than I could ever have about myself at that age, which is why, looking back, I'm extremely fortunate that I had those teachers and had Kay in place there to sort of keep me on task, and that was the biggest struggle, and still is today.
Need them all back again, playing exactly the same roles. Yeah, but
Exactly right.
it is interesting you talk there about that support structure that you had getting you through school, or getting you through that study period, and you needed that as a way to balance, I guess, that focusing on sport and perhaps elements that weren't your strength. When you then, consider about, you and sport, when did it start to get serious, or when did you start to realize, hey, I'm good at this. Maybe it can take me somewhere.
It was early on. I never really thought necessarily myself, because with the soccer stuff, I was obsessed. Like I was naturally really good at that up until in New Zealand, you sort of get a nudge and a nudge sort of every year from the age of 5 to play rugby with your mates. But that was what I was better at. I remember seeing like old not photos, sorry, drawings and things from primary school that said I want to grow up and play for Manchester United, and had a real obsession there. And in my mind, at sort of 8, 9 years old, I thought that was going to happen. And going over to rugby so late, I never truly thought that was going to be
Well, what do you mean?
a profession necessarily. I was just at the point where I was like
What do you mean by late?
late into rugby.
Yeah.
So I started my first year, I guess, properly playing rugby was under 15s.
Mm.
So I was sort of at that time, and I think looking back, it's probably a blessing in disguise that because I wasn't necessarily naturally good at it or had played it up until then, I had to learn everything as quickly as I could. So I became super obsessed, I guess, with figuring out, the real basics and fundamentals to just know how to play. Because I was in a position at an age where you should know the game, because you got to control it with your actions, your voice, play calling. So it was really a blessing in disguise at that age that I had to completely dive into learning it. And I even had a coach at that time who would give me sessions at lunchtime, and he was like a forward in rugby, which is a completely different position than me, and he'd take me for kicking sessions. And looking back, I was like, it was insane, because he just didn't need to do that. And I remember him saying the second to last year of school, we were mucking around or something, and he goes, you can all think you can do this, that, and the other, and none of you are going to make it outside of rugby. Maybe Baden or something. And I was like, just sort of taken aback by that, because I never again thought that anything would come of it. And I suppose the following year after that is when I made my first rep team, and then was leaving school and had a phone call from an academy of the team that I went on to play for, Counties Manukau Steelers, and he said, we think there's something there. We want to invite you to the academy twice a week and have a bit of a trial period over 4 weeks. And then if we think you're up to standard, then there may be an opportunity there for you. And it was that point in time, which was, again, just as school was finishing, the year after school, early 2008, looking back. And at that point, I went to these trainings, and I was pretty overwhelmed at first, because these guys are like box squatting like over 200 kgs and doing these hectic conditioning trainings, the sessions were really high quality. And I think at that stage, as soon as I did a few of them, especially the rugby stuff, I realized the higher you go up, sometimes the easier it becomes, because I had amazing coaching, everything was simplified, and it made everything easier for me to concentrate on.
Yeah, what do you mean by that? The higher you go up, the simpler it becomes, or the easier it becomes?
I think from a basic standpoint, it's just about doing your role. So when you get the higher you go up, the more you just focus on your role. You do that really well, and everyone else is doing the same, and that comes together and colludes into a team. And early on, I guess you don't even know better, but you're just sort of covering tackles here, or you're overplaying your hand, or you're trying to do other things maybe because there's holes or gaps in defence or attack or in the team. And the higher you go up, it again was great for my mind. I think I need a fair amount of structure and discipline put in place so I can just go out there and do it and follow it without too much thought. And I think by relieving some of that thought with things simplified and whatnot, made it a lot easier to pick things up at a rate that I loved. It just felt like I got better every training.
It's a really interesting insight, the way you've described you doing your role. You focus on you, the higher you go up in those levels. I guess the way you describe it as it gets simpler, that's not something it's not really something I've discussed. It's not something I've really stepped into on that level. So when you were playing and you were younger, as you look back, do you think, yeah, you were doing more, and you actually started doing less and less as you became, better?
Absolutely. You sort of, again, when you don't know any better either, you sort of overplaying your hand, you're trying to do everything. It's funny watching, I guess, schoolboy rugby or lower levels now, because you can completely relate. You think from a really young age, you'll be the same in football, soccer, the honeypotting, because you don't know any better, right? And then as you get older, you start to slowly understand there's a whole field around you, and the ball will get to you if things are done well. And again, that's the higher you go up, the more that becomes really simplified, and the direction becomes easier, so you know exactly what to work on. There's the real basics. There's a little bit of that's technical, tactical, and it's just the best coaches I've had were so amazing at simplifying what I, in my mind, and probably a lot of other players, overcomplicated and overthought.
It's interesting. You think about you as a, I guess, 15-year-old, 16-year-old soccer player, and coaches and others saw something in you that suggested you were worth that additional effort, that additional work to get you to become a better rugby player. What do you think they saw in you that you didn't see?
It's a good question, and those teachers are the ones that made me want to be a teacher, because they have had so much impact on me and still do long after I've left. And looking back and them giving me that time was incredible. I bumped into a PE teacher, one of the soccer coach, about a month or two ago back in New Zealand when I went back to see family, and he's just still the same man. And I don't know if it's necessarily just about seeing something in me or the type of person or people that they were just so willing to give anyone a go. And I think the soccer stuff was probably almost obvious, because there's a real innate natural ability there, and I was sort of making rep teams and things like that. And the beauty of it was, I think they probably thought that was, at the time when I was starting rugby, that was my strength, and that was probably, if I was going to go any further. This is my thoughts in hindsight anyway, that was going to be the sport for me. But they were so willing to support my decision in playing rugby. So they wanted me to still play like this first 11 at a young age and just battle away, at under 15s before potentially going up. And I guess them supporting me to find that out for myself was the most beautiful thing to me, because it just thinking back, if I put myself in the shoes that I'm in now as aspiring teacher, and I'm really passionate about doing this kind of thing, I would still find it extremely difficult to allow people that space and opportunity, give them the support around teaching and coaching like hundreds of other kids. So yeah, it's hard to put a finger on exactly what they saw and why, but it was just the support that they allowed me was pretty special.
Yeah, yeah, I think it is. I often ask, and so for me as a coach, as well, not in the career sense, but on field. So as a football coach, and often you get this view on, we see this talent or we see this little spark, and within that spark, often they've probably got the skill to do that, but it's often then a mentality that we see, which makes us believe that actually if we sharpen that mentality, that would work really well in this particular sport or in this particular position. And so listening to you and even a coach saying to you, kicking, and recognizing there's I guess a positive obsessive behavior in you that made them believe, well, you're going to work hard at that, and you'll be excellent at it because we can see you've got a natural eye or command or something about you there.
That's actually a really good point you make, because I think without even directly thinking back to me in that age or that position, it's often the kids that have this like raw competitiveness about them that they like, you've got to sometimes slow them down and be like, look, this is a PE class, or this is just for fun. Like, I love, and I'm not trying to take away your competitiveness at all, but let's try to get the other people involved. And like, you've got to sort of try to taper that, but you don't want to take it away.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess looking back to the kids that probably did crack on to either make it or get close to making it and really persist are those ones that sort of have that extra edge in terms of competitiveness and, like you say, like a bit of an obsession. So you're right. I think I see that in kids now, and it makes you want to, the ones that are coachable that have that mentality is the ones that you want to put the time into.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm interested. There must have been an interesting period for you as you were leaving school, and I speak with many school leavers, and I'm sure that those who are leaving at 18, they're thinking, right, that's it. My sporting support is done. I'm now in all age, open age. This is it. At that point, did you feel a rugby career was in reach for you, or were you off thinking, okay, right, what's my next level of education or work?
Yeah, good point. It was this interesting time, sort of straight after school, because I had this little gap where I hadn't had that conversation with the academy coach, and I was applying to universities, got into one in Otago. I was living in Auckland, and then got into AUT, which is in Auckland. And for sport at that time, Otago was the better one. AUT was pretty on par, but I didn't necessarily have any clear direction of playing sport professionally at that point. So I was like, I'm going to go to Otago and give this a crack. And then I was playing some Aussie rules. I played like 2 or 3 games on a Sunday, and there was a guy that's like, have you ever thought about playing Aussie rules? And I was like, I do prefer rugby, like just been doing on a Sunday with a couple of mates. He's like, we could get you over to a feeder club in Melbourne and give you a trial with Geelong and this, that, and the other, and you get a little job and see how you go there. And because at that point I was like, sport's still number one for me. I was like, you know what, maybe I'll do that. And literally the time I made the decision, I got the call like that day, more or less, from the academy coach. So that made the decision pretty easy. Like, because I preferred rugby, I'm going to go with the academy, and I'm going to go to AET because I can travel 45 minutes from home to university and try to juggle both and see where it goes. Because at the time it was a trial. I didn't necessarily know or think that there was profession there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably in that first year of uni where I was playing under 20s, and in the under 18 sort of system in my area, I was always sort of behind people. I was second or third string in my position. And then I made under 20s and was, first string and starting every game, and was in talks for making New Zealand 20s on the trials. Sorry for that. And I was at that point, I was like, oh, wow, maybe I am a little bit better than I thought, and there's an opportunity here. Um, and that's where I guess I sort of saw a bit of opportunity, and I started to go after it there.
Right. It sounds like you need the hours in order to catch up to everybody else, and on perhaps on just some of the basic things, right?
Yeah.
That is very much the case. What were you studying?
It was again the teachers that had that impact on me were so large. I was going towards the teaching, so I was doing a Bachelor of Sport and Recreation,
Yeah.
and at that time you do your bachelor, then you do a diploma of teaching. So I was in that direction, heading in that direction, and everything sort of started to kick off towards the end of my degree. So I'm back at the second part of it now.
Well, so talk to us about that. Like you say, the rugby started to kick on. Where did it take you? Where did it go?
I guess I was really fortunate in that year where, like I said, I started to believe maybe there was something there. That Christmas Eve, I've never been out on Christmas. Christmas Day is massive for our family. It's a big day, just catching up with a large group of people who are all super special to me. And on this Christmas Eve, after that year of under 20s where I started to believe and was doing the academy stuff and whatnot, was out with some mates and my brother and that, and ended up sort of someone was picking at a mate of mine, and eventually we went outside out of the bar that we're in, and it was just chaos. And again, we were going out there with really poor intentions, and this is probably one of the harshest lessons I've learned, but the best lessons I've learned was went outside and there was all sorts going on, and like wouldn't even know where or who um, was egging at my mate, and next minute I got pulled over from behind, and I don't even think it was anyone related at all. Just chaos out there, and didn't realise, but fell and dislocated my shoulder. And again, Christmas Eve, there was a lot going on. By the time I got to hospital, it was 2, 3 hours later. From the same area, someone had passed away in a car accident. The doctors told me after they came in. Again, a few hours after that. So my arm had been out for about 6 odd hours before they finally got it in. And I damaged nerve, needed about 6 months to try to get the nerve to refile before I got surgery. So I missed about 13, 14 months of rugby. And that was an amazing lesson for me, and also a blessing in disguise, because it meant that whole year I could put the time into the uni, and gave me a real head start to complete that degree. So it's funny looking back on that, and one of the best lessons I think I've ever learned. Especially like it would have been out again on a Christmas Eve, because to get something so stupid, to get in the way of something so important like family, and to jeopardize what was at the time a developing potential career
Hmm.
was probably just what I needed in a lot of ways. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough way to learn a lesson. When you talk about you had a belief, you had a view of where you might be able to go. What was it that gave you belief? What were you feeling? What did you see in the tea leaves to give you this? Oh, hold on, I could crack on here and do something special.
I think I was really lucky in that under 20s team, because a lot of those players were incredibly talented. And we were quite successful in that. And at the same time, in the academy that I was training, a lot of the guys, when I joined a year, 2, 3 years older than me, were making the top side. And I was getting to train with these guys twice a week, most mornings in the gym. And when it came to sort of like the scrimmages or the opposed sessions and stuff, like I was feeling pretty comfortable for the first time playing rugby. And these guys were now getting paid to play, a lot of them. So it was a bit of a realization there through action, I suppose. Like I still didn't necessarily have the internal belief, but I could see it through what was sort of transcribing through the training sessions. And I guess when I heard that there was interest in the New Zealand under 20s and things like that, I was like, it was, I guess, again, external validation or gratification,
Hmm.
which isn't necessarily, again, at that age, it's not necessarily the best thing, but it's all I knew. And that was kind of the turning point for believing maybe I could go somewhere with it.
Mm. Yeah. Again, that I suppose it's that interesting bit. This theme coming through is whilst there is that extrinsic, as you're saying, that external validation, or someone sees something and you're getting that support. Um, it sounds like you're following it through enjoyment. You're following it because, well, actually, yeah, I'm
Mm.
happy doing this sport. Playing and being around those types of people. So when you came back from or coming back from this injury, what type of goal had you set yourself?
I wanted to be in the mix the following year for the top side for the Steelers, which was the semi-professional team, and it was still felt so far away, and it's probably a great age almost to go through
Mm.
such sort of difficult times because prefrontal cortex and all the rest of it doesn't necessarily think logic. You just sort of get on with things without much thought, and I still had that obsessiveness to come back stronger and didn't necessarily. I had great support through the gym, through the academy stuff, but I just would go for like up to 15, 16K runs when you necessarily at that age you want to be doing more specific stuff. But I just had this obsession to come back
Yeah,
and see where it could go with probably a new lease of life, knowing that it could be taken away,
yeah,
and I'm sort of in charge of doing the rehab and doing the work, and there's no one else that's really going to be doing it for me.
yeah. And so, as you're coming back, and whilst you'd started off thinking teaching is a path that you wanted to explore, coming back from injury, you're seeing rugby, semi-professional rugby now as this thing that is really tangible. What decisions did you have to make? I mean, in order to set yourself up to be your best for rugby.
It was, yeah, looking back, it was a difficult time because I was still going to most classes, university classes. So I'd go to the gym in the morning. There's a couple always had like 2 or 3 sessions that you could choose from in the morning. From memory, it was, I think the earliest might have been 5:30, 6, yeah, so 5:30, 7:30, maybe 9:30, something like that. So I'd go early, then I'd and sometimes still in my kit, like boost up to uni, get to class, and then again do what I had to do at uni, get to the lectures, and then come back in the afternoons. 4 days a week I had trainings at night, and I guess again it's probably a good age to be running around like that because you've got the energy.
The energy to do it.
But in terms of the sacrifice, yeah, the energy to do it. But I still remember how tired I was at some lectures and falling asleep, and I'd take apples because I don't know where I heard it that eating an apple can make like wake you up when you're sleepy or tired. So I'd always have an apple
My,
with me, and I don't know where I heard
my
that, but
son,
I swear it helped.
my son, the rugby son, one of the rugby, coming from rugby, he said exactly the same thing. He said, says, Daddy, yeah, I need to eat apples because it's like having 2 coffees or something. 14, but okay. Well,
Yeah, where did we get that from? I don't know.
everybody now. This is
So I had that belief anyway. Yeah, just vividly remember just trying to stay awake. But and again, that's probably not necessarily just exhaustion from everything I'm doing, but I think my brain almost tells itself to shut down a little bit when I'm sitting still. So I've got to find ways to sort of keep myself active and keep hands moving if I'm doing notes, or I can't just be sitting and listening. So you sort of learn ways around it. But yeah, it was an interesting time how much travel and sacrifice I had to make in that sort of year to get in with a chance.
and with that chance, where did you get to?
Yeah, funnily enough, sort of the start of the run of all my injuries in a way, but I was really fortunate. The 10 that was starting at the time, first game, got a concussion and he had a few. So I came off the bench, played that game, and then got to start the next game, and it was against a team that should have smoked us in terms of the players they had. I think they went to the final that year, and I just ended up playing really well in my first start and got 2 more starts, and then developed a stress fracture in my back and was out for the season. So within the space of 4 games, I think I was just fortunate enough that I worked incredibly hard, was so obsessive, and had a piece of advice early on from an old counties rugby player. Like I was doing some kicking just before that first game. He said, always be ready, like someone could get injured and you're there starting, and don't take a back seat and be a passenger. And I remember hearing that I must have been 21 at that point, and just running with it, and it made a really big difference because obviously the next week I was starting and got an opportunity. And after those 4 games, thankfully, they offered me a 2-year contract following that, which again blew me away because I played 4 games, and at that time had a stress fracture in my back that took 9 months to heal. So again, was probably getting the validation and gratification from external resources, but again, it was probably all the work I was putting in was showing out there on the field. So it was again a good lesson to know that I'm in control, what I'm in control of, and how that can impact the performance.
It is interesting hearing you say that, because that that focus, the focus that you had on the game, the focus on supporting yourself. But I love the quote or the advice about always being ready, and perhaps that, we'll say obsessive nature, but that you were preparing yourself to come on, but you took it, and that preparation helped you take, I guess, advantage of that opportunity, and ultimately got you the contract that you were seeking.
Yeah, it's. I was probably at that age where, again, I was still so keen to learn because I felt like I still didn't know that much. And in hindsight, like I probably put enough work into to feel confident, but I still just had this inner belief that I didn't necessarily know nearly enough to be in this position. So I'd take on so much advice, and my dad passed when I was 15, and the guy that gave me the advice knew my dad, and we'd had a conversation. Maybe 6 months or so before about him knowing my dad. So the fact that it gave me this sort of connection to my dad 6 years on after his passing, to someone who'd played over 100 games for this team, to give me this time to walk down, see me kicking, and give me that time, really resonated with me at the perfect time.
Yeah. One of the bits, you think about how that memory, how that connection, again, really helped you to take that advice on board. And one of the things really conscious of is who gives the advice. It's something I'm super fascinated by in terms of that feedback mechanism, the advice mechanism mechanisms that are out there.
Yeah.
And it's like, who gives it to you, how it resonates, how you absorb it and sort of act from it.
Yeah, I think that sort of coincides with the coaches, we mentioned earlier, that you're probably getting a lot of the same messages from different people. And like you say, like it would be interesting to truly know. And again, sometimes we consciously know this is a coach that's coached the All Blacks or has performed at this level. So naturally your mind and body probably really focuses in on it. But yeah, the same thing that you hear from parents, they're like, a lot of them that may have been really good athletes themselves or played at a high level, they know or try to separate themselves from a lot of the, I guess, coaching and advice giving, because their dad, like, it's hard to play two roles.
Yeah.
So I guess that it's dependent on who gives it to you and what setting really makes a difference. And you don't always necessarily know why, but you're right, it'll be interesting to truly know the reasons behind it.
Yeah. When you look back at the contract, you got the contract, 2 years, boom, this is it, off you go. How did that change your aspirations of teaching?
Well, thankfully it was a semi-professional contract, so we train year round, but it's only like a 3-month season. So I thought I was rich. I got paid, I think I remember the first season that I signed, that was for that season, was like 15 grand. And I was like, wow, this is insane. Like I was getting paid 3 grand a year for the academy on $220 from the government to study.
Yeah.
So like that to me, with the study, just felt like I could get Subways twice a week. I could get every now and then I wouldn't just get sub of the day. I'll get like a chicken teriyaki on
Living large
on the good bread. So again, it was a great time where I could fully dive into rugby with the support around me and more training, more exposure to doctors, physios, trainers, the rest of it, whilst also, but not being my entire life just yet. I could still do my study around it. And yeah, that was again a real struggle to manage everything, but to me there was no other choice. And again, I had the belief, but I just still didn't necessarily know that I'd make it to the next level where it was fully professional. And again, really fortunate the following year, after coming back from the stress fractures, had a reasonable season, like a pretty good season. And then that carried over to the next season, and that's when I got involved with, I guess, my first fully professional contract, which was within the Chiefs training squad. So it slowly snowballed into the fully professional. But yeah, I never truly believed till I got there. So interesting looking back.
Yeah. And what, I often find with those who do that dual career, and at that point, semi-professional, continuing to study and trying to get an understanding, as we progress through the season, as those next levels become more and more tangible, I'll say the traditional career path, in your instance, the teaching, becomes that becomes part-time, that becomes the pastime, and the eye sort of moves away from it.
Mm.
Yeah. It sounds like for you were able to maintain that, but the challenge was making time for both.
Yeah, so and it's funny, like you say, looking back on it now, and probably knowing what we both know now in terms of having the study outside of rugby was perfect for someone like me, and probably most people at that age where they get quite obsessed with their sport. By having, I know there's a guy, Dan has that speaks of having multiple canvases, and he'll often encourage. He works with Penrith Panthers, and he's worked with a lot of other sports people. Sean Johnson's one of our best league players. And what he said really resonated with me about a year ago, and this is looking back in hindsight now as well, was by having, say, a study or something else to focus and concentrate on, you're able to completely switch off and put your time and be present there. And I remember when things started to kick off with rugby, the coach said to me, like, you need something to switch off. Like, I would train, study video, watch rugby, like I was non-stop, and I didn't necessarily know how to switch off. And uni back then, in hindsight, was exactly probably what I needed. And when it became full-time rugby, and I didn't have necessarily something to lean back on or have another way to express myself, when I didn't play well or perform, it felt like the end of the world. Like I couldn't joke around in the locker room. I wasn't as liked by my friends that didn't care. Just people that you thought cared about you apparently wouldn't like me anymore. And it's just amazing how when you don't have another canvas or a secondary thing to put your time and attention to, how it can actually massively impact your well-being and also your performance in that singular, I guess, type focus.
And so true. It is so true. And there are awesome studies out there that can empirically prove the benefit of having that second canvas. Helps individuals perform better as athletes, help them reach that peak performance, and like you say, sort of manage the level of obsession because they have to be distracted on something else. And you can see that it really works.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when things are there without you consciously putting them there and doing that. And I think, yeah, just having, like you said, that distraction is massive. Obviously, we want to be able to sit with things and absorb and accept and reflect, but we also need to have other things put in place so we've got multiple ways of expressing ourselves and not putting all of our identity in one focus.
Yeah. So as you became a professional rugby player, to what extent did you start to put all your identity into that single, I am a professional rugby player?
So in 2012, I made the Auckland Blues, which was the childhood team I always wanted to play for. And at that point, that was like full noise, like rugby is everything kind of situation. And that was when, without even consciously knowing it at the time, I put a lot into that, into my identity and put even training to me if I didn't train well. So the things I could control, again, coming from, and probably again more so in my head, was I didn't know a huge amount of rugby. I'm playing with all these, All Blacks and amazing rugby players that have played it their whole life and played professionally for years. So what can I do really well at? Fitness and this, that, and the other, and would do really well in those aspects, which were pretty, I guess, black and white in a way. Whereas the rugby side of the things, I wouldn't say I struggled. I just didn't believe that I knew enough. So I put a whole lot of time into it, and if things didn't go my way, I was a failure in this, that, and the other. So that year, I found really challenging. We had coaches that were a newish group and awesome in hindsight, and I'm friends with today, but maybe weren't necessarily the best people managers. And we had a lot of new boys coming into the system at that point, and a lot of the feedback we were constantly focusing on our MOSs, which the psychologist from Counties Manukau would talk about our moments of shit. And he's like against it. He's like, we should just focus on moments of perfection. And it's a really counterintuitive sort of argument or thought process, but he's like, we focus on that, and he's got a big reasoning behind it. And that year, there wasn't much of that. It was always, what can I improve, or what can he improve? This is what you did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really weighed on me at a young age, where I probably needed a little bit more support and guidance, and to focus on the more positive side of things.
To your point, throughout your early career, academically and sporting or athletically, you received positive reinforcement, positive support that guided you, that helped you shift sports, that helped you select subjects or at least career paths through university.
Mm.
And so that is quite a shift for you to move from, I guess, the more positive, nurturing reinforcement towards one that is perhaps a bit more punitive and a bit more focusing on the negative aspects rather than the strengths.
Yeah, absolutely. Even at counties, we had a coach named Tana Umanga, who was All Black captain, and he was an incredible coach. And you realise moving forward as your career goes on how amazing he was at. He'll touch base with every player once a day, whether it just be a hello, how's your weekend, how's your day, how are you feeling? And he was also amazingly, and I don't even want to say amazingly positive. He was just incredible at telling you what you did really well, telling you what you can work on, and just making you feel like there was always a clear direction, and you went away feeling good regardless of, I'm not going to select you this week because James is at this point in time a better attacking player, but next week I'm going to pick you for the defensive side of things, and this, that, and the other. And he was always so honest, and you knew that there wasn't mincing of words, but there was care behind words, with always something either to improve or something that went well. And again, that was probably another huge part of why I was so keen and wanted to keep progressing. So you're right, by going away from that, again, you're making me think of this more so now than I ever have before, that would be a really big impact in terms of so used to having that positive reinforcement to not having it necessarily at all.
Yeah, I can. It is that shift. And well, as your career continued, then professionally, well, obviously, it wasn't completely, what's the word or phrase, smooth sailing, in terms of where things came. But catches up. What was that? What was your professional career like? How did that really sort of shape you?
It was interesting in hindsight, because the first sort of half of it was, all this probably identity in terms of, without rugby or without this, I don't know who I am, to I had so many injuries throughout my career, to the point where I had 2 little broken bones in my fingers that were badly broken, dislocated. I had surgery on them, and I went from playing the Super Rugby against Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, to I'm out for a season, to you need to perform well in this next season to get a contract, to breaking another finger, to being like, what's going on? Like, I just can't even go into rugby field without falling apart. So then I went to the UK and wanted to reinvigorate my career there. And then as I'm sort of leaving, get there in the cold, I find out I've got arthritis in those 2 fingers. And at that point I was like, I can't enjoy this anymore, because it hurts physically to catch a ball, to pass it. The real basic part of the game I can't do without discomfort or pain. And I sort of masked it for a year and a half over there in the UK, till I finally got them fused to take the pain away. But I didn't open up enough or talk to people enough about it. So I got to the point where I was so low, and because I was so low, I ended up getting 4 concussions in that season, to the point where they're like, no more rugby for the foreseeable future. And at that point I was like, man, like, I'm 26, 27, this is where I'm supposed to be peaking, and I'm just declining, and I just can't enjoy this anymore. And that was a pretty daunting time and prospect, because I didn't know what was next. And was super fortunate that I had some support around me at the club when I finally did talk about and open up, and they were able to get me into this interim director of rugby role in Mill Hill School up in North London, and I loved that and dove into that, but it was only a short time contract. And eventually, after about a year off rugby, went back and played semi-pro in New Zealand, back to Counties Manukau, and told myself, like, if I get another concussion or a serious injury, that's me done. Like, there's just a great opportunity. They reached out to me.
Yeah.
I'll see how we go. And Yeah, like, again, there's similar sort of
Yeah.
process that followed that, but that was that time in the UK that I really struggled with for sure.
Going thinking about that time in the UK, thinking about that low point, you spoke about that it would have been better had you opened up sooner. Why didn't you open up sooner?
I was fortunate. There was a guy who'd come to Saracens at the time who was released from a club in Scotland, and he was he 2 years younger than me, a year younger than me, a year or 2 years younger than me, and he was going through the process of this might be my last opportunity. Like I don't know if I'll be playing again, and he was sort of spiraling, and he was a great sort of sounding board in a way that we both did probably in a bad way at a time where you don't know any better, so you go and have a few beers together and you distract yourself without probably talking about it openly and free of any sort of distraction. So he was great in the fact that we had something to share, but we probably spiraled in the wrong direction without truly diving into things. And
Hmm.
I guess it was probably pride and not knowing any better at that time as well, because I still didn't want to believe that this was where I was at, where
Yeah.
it hurts to catch a ball and I have to pretend and I don't want to sound like a wuss in front of my teammates and the coaches got me over here and paying me, and the idea is that I'll be replacing a really strong player that's been there for 10 years the following year after I've had this little, and I'm just like, I feel like a failure. Like, how can I truly deal with this? And if I open up, then they're just going to send me home and I'm not going to get an opportunity. So I was in this weird sort of balance of, is this really where it's at? Like, this can't be the end. And I don't want anybody to think ill of me. So it was a tricky little transition there, for sure.
That I mean, that is a really tough period. I know there are for many athletes going through those types of periods, self doubt and almost a fear of opening up is going to quite literally put you on the plane home. What changed? What
Mm,
changed to enable you to open up and almost face that fear?
I think it was, again, I've had so many strange blessings in disguise, and I think having the concussions probably forced me to stop. Like, it's, again, you've got one brain, and yeah, you can't really mess around with that. And with the fingers, I probably would have kept going and going till, who knows how dangerous it could have got in terms of my mentality. But having that forced, I had to step back. I couldn't do contact training. I had more time on my hands, so I'd have more conversations. We had a professional development officer there. There was a coach that was super supportive, and I don't know, at the time he told me he'd lost a friend to suicide. And again, I wasn't at that point. I would say that I was pretty depressive. I would have been close to being classed as depressed at that state. And he saw something and could tell in my demeanor that I wasn't right. And I guess it wasn't necessarily me opening up. He would come to me and would ask questions and show real interest and what's the plan, what's next, and this, that, and the other. And he allowed me to open up. And I still was pretty closed off. And then he kind of pointed me in the direction of another guy there and the professional development guy with, hey, talk to Jonesy. He's a psychologist as well, can talk to you about what's going on, opportunities afterwards. At that point, he spoke about meditation. I got into that. And then, well, look, we've got this relationship with the school. Had you thought about getting involved in a school or coaching? And I was like, and again, had a bit of a push and they guided me, which was magic. So again, I just have been very, very fortunate at the right times with the right people around me to push and guide me in the right direction.
I love that. I love the fact someone came, but someone was there who, like you say, allowed you to open up, created the space for you to feel comfortable to go and, well, to speak about how you were feeling and be able to use that time away from the game well. Why, what do you think the, it's that idea of you going coaching, asking you, had you thought about coaching? Why do you think that was something that was proposed to you?
It's amazing the people that come to you in times of your life when you need them and why. And I imagine and again, they'd been reasonable rugby players themselves. They've played at a reasonable level, some higher than others, but again, without consciously knowing at the time, they'd been through that transition phase. And I was just so in my head and in such a downward spiraled, not spiraled, just a poor state. I mentally wasn't myself. I didn't have that same energy that I had, and they probably saw times that they went through were quite similar in terms of that transition, and I guess just looking back, the gratitude I have for them, again, you're bringing a lot to surface here in terms of things I haven't thought about probably enough, and it make me want to reach out. But yeah, I think it was just probably right place, right time, around the right people. And again, I didn't ask for help. They had the kindness and compassion to come to me and ask questions, I suppose. And that, again, is something I'm learning as I'm getting older, is it's the questions are the things that evoke, true feelings and direction.
Yeah.
My brother's amazing at that as well. So, yeah, again, in hindsight, now that you bring these things up, I would love to tap into their brains and find out how and why and what they recognise. But yeah, just grateful for what they did at that time.
Yeah, again, that right moment, the right time. It is great, and you should reach out to them. You should definitely reach out to them and just check in. And
Joe Shaw, Donald Burrell,
go.
Jonesy, good men.
That's it. There you go. That's it. Hopefully, they're listening now, and they recognise the impact, the positive impact that they had on you as well. I guess it's never too late to realise. But
Nah.
I guess during that period, and I'm getting to this. I guess the point in your story where I'm thinking, well, at what point did you then start to think, okay, I've reached the top that I'm going to reach here, and I need to start thinking, or at least start acting on what happens next. What was that moment for you?
Even when I went to this interim director of rugby role, which was awesome, and then I continued with the school, worked a little bit with the sports academy, and was kind of in a teacher's assistant type role in the UK. And I was looking into doing what over there was the PGCE, which is the equivalent of Diploma of Teaching, the postgraduate course to get in to become a teacher. And I was sort of flirting with the school sponsor me to allow me to work and study and perhaps even support the payment there. And again, that time I got reached out to with the rugby, and I was like, okay, one more crack. Went to rugby, didn't play very well. It's been a long time since I played, and sort of just got by the season, and was well aware that it wasn't my best season. So I sort of, at the time with my agent, I was like, if an opportunity like Japan came about where they're playing 10 to 12 games a season, I'd be open to talking about that. But that's probably, I'm not too interested in going back to the UK. I'm going to have to start thinking about life after rugby now. And I was still pretty confused. So I reached out to a professional development lady who's a good friend of mine who had been with us in that team since I was 18, 19 with the academy. And she was like, we've got 4 sessions. You've got 4 sessions free to go see a psychologist, like not necessarily a sports one, but a psychologist for this mental health plan that we have with rugby. Hadn't known about that. So I was like, yeah, okay. And I was sort of, what do? Do I really chase this rugby thing and put everything into that, which again is a little bit out of my control because the playing been done? Or do I do this teaching? And it's amazing how caught up in my head from what even you could probably recognize as just go apply for the teaching, and if anything happens with the rugby, it happens. If not, you've got the teaching. But I couldn't think that clearly. So he was really basic and told me, go ahead, just go through the application. Like what's it going to lose? And I kind of at that time had that feeling again where I was like, rugby's not everything. Like I've got this, and I was going through the interview process and was getting the next stages, and I was like, look, I felt like I was doing the right thing for the first time in a long time, and got into the university. But then the Japan opportunity came up, and such a unique experience and opportunity that I took that and played there for 2 years. And that was the moment. I think that was the real change in my mentality, where I didn't have this, my whole identity wasn't on playing anymore. I went to a place where rugby wasn't huge and didn't feel like you had the same perceived pressures, but I'd just lost rugby potentially, and I was moving on to the real life. So this was now a bonus. And I was able to just let go and play some of my best rugby, meet 2 of my best friends and many other really good friends, and just let go of all this pressure and self-imposed expectations I could just release that, and I started to understand what acceptance meant and what could be achieved if you played a little bit more free.
Yeah.
And it was a shame it happened so late, but it was, yeah, two very enjoyable years of my life, and I ended up having another retirement after that, coincidentally, but it made rugby more fun at that period of time.
Yeah, and that sense of being free is so important. And I think for so many athletes, we find it, or it's found at the end of the career. It's found when it's like, oh, I should have been doing this ages ago. I'd, I'd have been even better. Or at least
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
so true, so true.
So for you then, when you think about the time in Japan, I guess just the last little bit on Japan is you'd applied for the teaching you'd already applied for the teaching. Did you start it whilst you were in Japan, or was it something you just put on hold?
Yeah, put on hold. So that was, again, New Zealand, I don't think they still have it, which is strange, is the diploma is full time. There's no online
Hmm.
option or correspondence.
Yeah,
So by getting the Japan opportunity, I think that came about sort of as I was going to be starting uni. So it was just,
yeah,
can I put it on hold and, do the Japan opportunity, and I'll come back and do the diploma eventually. And yeah, after the Japan came back, and that PD, the professional development AD, encouraged us all to try different things. And again, it's funny how many times I've gone around in circles to come back to where I am now, and I could have had it done so long ago. But she's like, just you finishing rugby, you've got some good connections, go and see what real estate's like. And I was like,
yeah.
oh, I can never do that. Anyways, would go along, do that in my PD hours, and then
Mm,
decided to give that a go.
yeah,
And then my final contract came up 6 months into that. I was like, oh, this is all right. Like, this is kind of cool. I'm in a place where I played a lot of rugby, and I've got a lot of good friends here, and it's more about relationships, and you'll get business through mates, and it felt like a nice place to be.
hmm,
And then an opportunity with Fiji came up, which was super
yeah,
unique and rare, and I just couldn't say no to that. And funnily enough, going through everything I've gone through in terms of, I guess, professional or personal development and growth, I probably got the most in that season with the Fijian boys, because they taught me what life's really about.
hmm,
Gratitude and being truly present and
yeah,
slowing down, and they truly live with this sort of multiple canvas idea where rugby is like this 80-minute thing where you just go out there, and you're willing to die to play this game of rugby, and then inside and outside and around it, you're just enjoying life. Like,
mm,
everything you see in life there's beauty, there's gratitude, there's so much simplicity, and that was the most magic year for me from a personal growth standpoint. So following that, you sort of on this high, that rugby's done. I was more than happy to accept that it was done after that,
yeah.
but still went through this difficult transition period where it's been two years now, and I feel like I'm in the right place, I'm doing the right thing, but it still took me 2 years following.
Well, you knew it at 18, but you've got there now, right? Um,
Yeah,
the,
exactly. Like,
yeah,
just keep coming back.
yeah. But it is that thread. It is the bit that I think is really interesting. Is it was there, but there are these other things that have certainly shaped you, and you certainly are probably a better educator as a result of those experiences. And
Mm,
what I do find fascinating, just through your story, is where you've played rugby and how, just through little phrases, you've described the differences in how the game is approached and how your focus on that game has been, through to, all the way through to there in Fiji, where it is almost it's used as a celebration within life on the field, and so it is, like you say, one of many canvases that you actually hold whilst you're through life, and I think that's such a great philosophy that you brought through.
yeah, thank you, Ryan. And like you say, reflecting the, I couldn't imagine looking back, going from 18, doing the study, doing my diploma of teaching, and then teaching kids from that age, like
Mm,
knowing what I know and the experience and challenges I've gone through now. And even now, you're still trying to sort of take bits and pieces from teachers, and how can you best model and be the best version of yourself to be a better educator and a role model. And yeah, it's funny because, again, hindsight can really stab you in the foot at times, but in this case, it has been a blessing in disguise, and it's taken a long time to get to where I've probably always known I want to be. If it's forever, it's forever. If it's not, I'm more than happy to pivot and try other things. But it's something that I feel like I need to do, and I'm doing it probably at the right time due to the experiences I've had and the lessons I've learned.
You know, I look at our life, certainly our careers, as I use my Google Maps analogy, where we can place a destination, but there are so many routes to get to that destination. And there's a lot of richness in being able to start by, I'll take the bus and then actually I'll get off, I'll do the train, maybe I'll walk for a little bit. And whilst we can all reach that destination, be it teaching, educating, passing on knowledge, the routes to get there can be so varied and so interesting. And so, like you said, you may have always known, or within you always knew, that teaching destination was there, but you've had that opportunity to take so many different paths, and that's such a wonderful route to get to where you are today.
Yeah, it's a great lesson to learn too. Like you hear that cliche from early age now, so that's the journey, and you don't necessarily know what that means until you've gone through multiple journeys, like you say. Because yeah, like the destination again is, if you think about sporting terms, is almost the outcome.
Mm.
And if we really think about the journey, it's the process and the values that we hold, and while we go about each action and each step and each moment. So if we don't have all that,
Yeah.
then what is it really about? Like, who wants to get somewhere quickly and not enjoy how they got there? And I guess after rugby again, I was kind of like, maybe I'll do real estate and it'll just help me get into a financial position, and I wanted to get places quickly, and it's taken me some time to slow down and be like, anything that's happened to me in the past, none of it's happened quickly. Like, some of it's taken a very long time, but nothing's happened overnight. And the things that feel really good to reflect on in the conversations that we're having are the things that took the most work. So it's this weird paradox where we want the easy stuff, but doing the challenging tasks and the things we don't want to do is what makes getting to a destination that again is going to constantly change, because we've got multiple destinations to arrive at, is the thing that is the most, I guess, enjoyable and most rewarding part.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And look, alas, I've held you way longer than I said I would, but a few more questions, because it's just interesting having this form of conversation with you, but also I guess the thinking live whilst we're going through the chat as well is great. Um, for now, your I'll say most recent retirement, just in case there's a master's that's going to kick in late. But in your what have you found to be the most challenging part for you?
It's probably going from rugby and sporting environments. You've got like a structure, where training are, what time, the little bits and pieces to set yourself apart are extras that you fit in between these structured areas. And I found it really challenging, being in charge of coming up with my own, because I feel like with guidance, with structure, I can attack things a lot more succinctly without, maybe I should have done that. And like, you can go off on all these different tangents, procrastinate, find all these different reasons to not do certain things. But when you've got a structure in place, it's a lot more simple to just go out there and attack. And I found that really challenging. And then you sort of, probably without knowing it, you everybody's going to training to try to achieve the same goals. Like, you're all going there to enjoy each other's company and work hard and train hard to try to win something. Everybody's got this incredible, again, it's the journey that makes it fun, but we've got this incredible goal, and we're all got this mindset that is quite aligned. And you go into the real world and you've got complaining is normal. You've got people willing to talk badly about someone else. You've got this person's wanting to get this thing or do that, and that's that. And there's all these different directions, and you're just like, oh man, I was incredibly privileged to be in a position where I was going to work, which again never felt like work, with mates, regardless if I had a really serious injury or was at my best. I was going to work and work towards something with guys that are supporting, because they're doing the same thing and want the best out of me because it's going to help them, and vice versa. And not having that was pretty enlightening and challenging. So I feel you're sort of a lot more aware of teams that you get yourself into and who you surround yourself with after sport.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Interesting hearing about that. I suppose it moves me on to, so when you look back at your career and the journey that you've enjoyed and the people around you, what, based on your experience, what guidance would you give to someone else looking to prepare themselves best for their sort of second wind in life?
I think what you're doing is amazing because you're in that space where just giving people opportunity to have another canvas or explore different
Mm.
possibilities and switch off from something that so can be so obsessive. And I think regardless of, like you say, you go in different directions and there's so many paths potentially to get there. But I think I was probably fortunate that I had a degree and also that I knew that I wanted to do teaching at some point in time, regardless of how far away it is. And I was super fortunate that I got injured and was able to more or less complete my degree before rugby fully kicked off. So, and again, I don't think it necessarily needs to, but all right, I'm going to go get a degree or I'm going to do this. You start with, because there's so many ways you can study now as well. Like, am I interested in this? I'm going to do that. Shall I give this a crack? Just sign up to a paper and try that. And it's just having something to distract your mind that's completely unrelated to the game. And again, as we talk about hindsight, I did at times have it, but I wished I had the degree and I knew afterwards I wanted to do the diploma of teaching. I would have loved to have been more proactive and maybe done the odd papers to accumulate a diploma in psychology or
Yeah.
little courses here and there, because as this conversation has made me really aware of, when I was studying, and I had the rugby, and then when I signed up to study again a decade later or more, and then had the rugby, I was a different person. And it's really hard to tell someone to do that, and you can put things in front of them, but yeah, I just feel like there's more opportunities now to do the online studies, to try different courses. And again, I'm thinking more from a study perspective is go out and try, building with some mates and what have you, but it's just having something else that's not, your identity isn't just focused in on your sport.
Baden, that's really good. And, I just want to say it's been great chatting to you, through this conversation, understanding your journey. And I think that's a great piece of insight in terms of, preparation. And what you're really talking about to me there for someone to think about is the canvas, is to take that concept of multiple canvases. And whilst they can have one on sport, which may certainly guide them and open them up to many opportunities, it is very much a case of trying to keep another one going, and practice different types of painting or drawing or whatever creative thing that goes alongside that particular canvas. And I think that is one of those. That's a great piece of advice for people to listen to and to sort of take on board from today.
Yeah, it's again, it's something you've really helped invoke in me in terms of reflecting on things maybe I haven't thought about in a long time, and again, probably is showing in what I'm doing now, where I've got multiple roles. So if I feel like I haven't performed well in one, or I'm a little bit lethargic in another, I've got something else to do an hour later, and you find probably at first you can think, oh, I don't know if I can juggle like full-time sport with doing some papers, and you'll find every reason to talk yourself out of things. But I guess as we're both aware of, when you actually dive into it, there's this sense of probably greater purpose, because when you take a little bit of that purpose out of that singular focus, which is our sport, and put it somewhere else, you just feel a lot lighter, eh?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's well said, Baden. Well said. It definitely is. Well, listen, I want to
Right
say,
back at you.
yeah, I want to say thank you so much for taking your time or giving your time today for this conversation. I think it's been absolutely brilliant. So, listen, thanks very much once more.
No, Ryan, thanks so much, man. It's amazing how much you've brought to light for me, and how probably meditative this was for me. So thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure.